Oh, hello! I'm Andrew from Limitless Park, and D23 season is upon us! The Disney fan club event D23 Expo is swiftly approaching. The event will be held from August 9th to 11th, and hopefully we'll see all sorts of cool announcements. Sure, there might be news about movies and other stuff, but here we mainly care about the theme park side of Disney. So to make sure we get all the parks expansions that we could ever ask for, I recommend leaving out a stocking for Disney Parks Chairman Josh D'Amaro. That way he can leave you all kinds of fun gifts. It's a tradition that I've had for every D23 Expo. Of course, the gifts from
the previous
Expo were a little bit of a downer. But they haven't all been bad. In fact, I think it might be fun to do a little nostalgic trip down memory lane and take a look at the first D23 Expo that was held in 2009. We'll mainly be discussing the theme park side of things, of course. I mean, yeah, I love talking about the new Muppet movies being announced here, but it wasn't appropriate to talk about it at my great-grandfather's funeral, and it doesn't make sense to talk about here. Anyways, Disney's then and now CEO Bob Iger, God, we're all living in eternal hell, unveiled plans for the D23 Expo on March 10th, 2009. The expo would be held at the Anaheim Convention Center in California, which is very close to the Disneyland Resort, and would take place from September 10th to the 13th. The event was and still is billed as the ultimate Disney fan event, and back in 2009 featured all sorts of panels and pavilions about Imagineering, models for future attractions, actual tests for future attractions, tons of stuff from the Disney archives, and much more. But most importantly, there were theme park announcements. Well, damn, with this being the first D23, there had to be all sorts of crazy announcements. And by all sorts, I mean, well, I don't know, like 2 announcements? Oh, hell yeah, I'm so good at guessing things that happened in 2009.
What happened in 2000?
9/11.
2009.
Oh, sorry, I meant not 9/11. See, even if there were only 2 brand new theme park related things announced, I don't think that's giving it enough credit considering one of those things is a pretty big land expansion. But whatever, let's cover the smaller of these 2 first. Star Tours, The Adventures Continue, or as they announced it back then, Star Tours 2. This announcement was honestly pretty awesome. It starts off with then Disney Parks and Resorts president Jay Rasulo saying that some people don't like the changes they've made over the years at Disneyland. Some things never change. And then he apologizes about closing the beloved original Star Tours in 2010.
I'm sorry to tell you that as of October 2010, Star Tours will be closing.
Some things do change. But immediately after that, the stage is swarmed with stormtroopers and Darth Vader appears on screen, and he's pissed.
The Emperor is most displeased with the plans to close Star Tours.
Or I guess the Emperor is pissed, and then Rasulo is pissed that Darth cut him off. I don't know. Everyone's pissed at this point except the audience who is yucking it up. Oh my God, Darth Vader! I love when I see characters I recognize sign my stomach! Rasulo basically says not so fast, we're updating Star Tours to make it more advanced than anything anyone has ever seen before, and it's opening in 2014.
Unacceptable. The Emperor will not tolerate an opening later than 2011.
Man, the Emperor would not be okay with the announcement to opening windows of Tron. Or Cosmic Rewind. Or Moana. Or also, I like how in this joke the Emperor has final say over what Disney does. What a crazy world that would be.
Okay, that won't be necessary.
I hope so, Chairman, for your sake.
So after Darth threatens Rasulo's life, he asks to see the new Star Tours in action. He whips out a pair of Andrew's #1 favorite Ticket to Motion Sickness, and then they roll a clip of what guests can expect to see on the new Star Tours, which is entirely in 3D. The video ends off with the Star Tours logo followed by a Roman numeral 2, and then Jay Rasulo says the audience better be soaking after that, and then reveals a pretty neat looking poster that only those in the room can get. So that was the reveal of Star Tours The Adventures Continue, and honestly, it was pretty cool. Of course, the ride is nothing mind-blowing by today's standards, but a 3D simulator was still a pretty novel concept at the time. And hey, at least we can say it is a ride, which is something we can barely say about the next announcement, despite it being way bigger. which is pretty wild. The huge reveal at D23 Expo 2009 was a massive expansion to Fantasyland. This was actually the first thing announced at the show, but I switched the order around because I get twitchy if I don't talk about Star Wars first. Jay Rasulo starts off by saying the most boomer thing I think I've ever heard.
Before we go any further, I need to clarify something. It's kind of been on my mind. There have been a lot of rumors online, and I don't know where they come from. And I don't even know where they get started. But it's about a big expansion of Fantasyland at Walt Disney World. Well, these rumors are absolutely true.
Jay, if you said the rumors were true, then don't you think it's kind of obvious that the information was leaked out of Disney somehow? Like, what do you mean you don't know where they came from? And why would you follow it up by saying they're correct? Thank you for joining me for today's press conference. Let me just start off by saying that there's a lot of rumors going around online about how I killed my ex-wife, and I have no idea where they come from or how they got started, but they're true. Anyways, the audience freaks out over the concept art shown on the screen. Now, if you look closely, actually, screw it. If you barely look at all and then look at an image of New Fantasyland when it was completed, you'll realize there's a little thing I like to call massive family roller coaster missing from the original artwork. That's because originally the focus of New Fantasyland was pretty different.
We are nearly doubling the size of Fantasyland to include more of your favorite princesses.
Rasulo says how important meeting princesses are to the Disney experience, and then begins to show off all sorts of new meet and greet opportunities for guests. Look, in retrospect, it's pretty easy to make fun of this announcement. I mean, the main draw is just going around and seeing different characters. Dude, I don't need new characters. I can just loop around all day seeing Goofy. So it doesn't really excite me, but I will say this was announced at a time where the word immersive was becoming a really popular buzzword. It's before it was really overused in every single theme park announcement these days, and I'd say it overall fits really well here. You see, this was around the time when Universal had announced the Wizarding World of Harry Potter, which would allow guests to get as close to being inside those movies as possible. Sure, it had rides, but one could argue the main draw of that land was to make you feel like you're actually a part of Harry Potter's world, walking the streets of Hogsmeade, dining and shopping at locations from the big screen. It was exciting. And I think Disney was really trying to do that here too. It's just that in this announcement they kind of forgot about that first part, to add any rides. So they show off a cool meet and greet with Cinderella where she actually transforms from her servant clothes into her ball gown. And then there's a meet and greet in Sleeping Beauty's cottage where they're throwing her a Sweet 16 party because she didn't get to have one because...
As you know, she didn't get to have one because she was sleeping.
Thanks, Jay. They never laugh when I do that joke. Of course, that might be because I'm usually performing it at kill shelters. And then there's a meet and greet with Belle from Beauty and the Beast at her father's cottage. It's worth noting that all three of these are much more than just your simple meet and greet, as they act as a sort of mini interactive show, which I think works well with the immersive setting they were going for. Of course, the only one of these to actually be built was Enchanted Tales with Belle, and honestly, that looked to be the best one, so I'm glad it's what they decided upon. And after that, they reveal Be Our Guest and Gaston's Tavern, two dining experiences also themed to Beauty and the Beast, which also thankfully got built, because these two are pretty great themed dining experiences. I mean, I've only had Be Our Guest once, and it was for breakfast, and it sucked, but I've heard dinner's pretty good. Also, with Gaston's Tavern, they make a joke about how he uses antlers in all of his decorating as a reference to that one line in the movie.
I use antlers in all of my decorating.
As he said, he uses antlers in all his decorating.
And honestly, I don't think I've ever really noticed them in the tavern. I need to pay more attention next time I'm there, slurping down some of LeFou's tasty brew. Then they finally get to a ride with Under the Sea Journey of the Little Mermaid. And I know what you're thinking. Andrew, didn't you say they didn't have any rides when they announced New Fantasyland? Well, yeah, they technically had this, but one, as okay as Journey of the Little Mermaid is, it's not the e-ticket attraction Rasulo claims it to be. And two, the ride had a clone that opened at Disney's California Adventure over a year before the Magic Kingdom one. So it's not like this is a super new, unique experience that's only found at this park. And even if it was, it's just another basic Omnimover ride.
The new Little Mermaid attraction is a real e-ticket.
I hope Darth Vader threatened his life for that one too. But hey, they were able to cheat even harder and add another ride to New Fantasyland by relocating Dumbo, as well as adding a second carousel for better throughput. This is seriously the least exciting ride addition they could have made to this, but I will say the concept art made it look really pretty, and the big announcement of the ride having no queue was an innovative idea at the time. They do really upsell this though as being the first act of a show with all sorts of interactive games to play, when in reality it's just a playground for babies. Finally, they end the New Fantasyland section off by saying Pixie Hollow would come to the land sometime later on in the expansion's life. This also never happened as it was scrapped in favor of the Storybook Circus area. While I think a lot of the scrapped ideas were kinda neat, it was ultimately a much better idea to replace them with the Seven Dwarfs Mine Train and the rest of Storybook Circus later on, even if I get more thrill out of eating Panera than I do riding Seven Dwarfs. Which isn't saying much, but still. So those were the two big new announcements at the First D23 in 2009. They weren't anything spectacular, but at the time I think they were alright. I especially loved the use of Darth Vader in the Star Tours announcement, and it was cool to look back on an alternate take on New Fantasyland to see what could have been. Of course, there were technically other parks related things that happened at the expo, like Johnny Depp came out on stage as Jack Sparrow, there was a real WALL-E animatronic, a real Bob Iger animatronic, displays for the Disney Cruise stuff, and the expansions coming to Hong Kong Disneyland, and of course, a massive display of the Cars Land coming to Disney California Adventure, featuring an actual Lightning McQueen animatronic, which is something I dream about constantly.
Get that shine. Use Rusty's, and you too can look like me. Ka-chow.
But those were all things that guests knew about before the D23 2009 Expo. Even if they had some new details, they were announced prior to the show, and I wanted to focus on brand new Parks and Resorts stuff this time. And as we've now discussed, there wasn't too much new going on at the first D23. It was a pretty good show, but nothing mind-blowing. Hopefully this year will be better though. Personally, I'm wishing for a revamp of Space Mountain with 10 inversions, the revival of the Great Muppet Movie Ride idea at Hollywood Studios, the return of the Epcot Ball Wand and the Sorcerer's Hat, the rebuilding of the entirety of Primeval World with a third track, Disney buying Epic Universe once it's completed. Not all of Universal though, that's pushing it. Oh, and at D23 2019 they had this really cool brand deal with Target, and I really liked that. So maybe they'll do something similar. Well, at least I still got one thing I wanted.